Maria Thompson wasn't born into privilege. She grew up in a quiet little town in Ohio, where life was simple but challenges were plenty. Her childhood home was modest, a small house with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was filled with love. Maria's mother, Margaret, worked long hours as a seamstress to make ends meet after Maria's father left when she was just 5 years old. Despite the struggles, Margaret always emphasized the importance of hard work, kindness, and resilience. "You can't control what happens to you," Margaret would say, threading needle after needle late into the night, "but you can control how you respond." From a young age, Maria learned to appreciate the value of effort. While other kids played outside, she helped her mother mend clothes or fold fabrics. At school, she excelled academically, not because she was naturally gifted, but because she refused to give up. If she didn't understand something, she stayed up all night studying until she did. Teachers noticed her determination and encouraged her to dream big. One teacher even told her, "Maria, there's no limit to what you can achieve if you keep going like this." Those words stuck with her for years. After high school, Maria knew college was her ticket out of their small town, but money was tight and scholarships were competitive. Determined not to let anything stand in her way, she applied to every scholarship program she could find. Late nights became her routine, writing essays, filling out applications, and working part-time jobs to save whatever she could. Finally, her persistence paid off. A local business association awarded her a full scholarship to attend a nearby university, where she majored in business administration. College opened doors Maria never imagined possible. For the first time, she met people from different walks of life who inspired her to think bigger. During her junior year, she landed an internship at a logistics company that specialized in shipping and supply chain management. It wasn't glamorous work, filing paperwork, answering phones, and organizing spreadsheets, but Maria approached each task with enthusiasm. She saw opportunities where others saw monotony. When she noticed inefficiencies in the company's delivery routes, she proposed a new system that saved them both time and money. Impressed by her initiative, her supervisor promoted her before her internship ended. By the time Maria graduated, she had already built a solid reputation in the industry. Her professors recommended her for entry-level positions at larger firms, but Maria chose to stay with the logistics company that had given her a chance. Over the next few years, she climbed the ranks steadily, earning promotions through sheer grit and innovative thinking. Colleagues admired her ability to solve problems quickly and fairly. Executives began taking notice too, inviting her to meetings and asking for her input on major decisions. It wasn't long before Maria realized she wanted more, not for herself, but for others. She dreamed of creating a company that prioritized fairness and opportunity, unlike some of the corporations she'd encountered along the way. With careful planning and financial discipline, she saved enough to launch her own venture, a logistics startup focused on ethical practices and community impact. The early days were tough, with sleepless nights and endless challenges, but Maria persevered. Slowly but surely, her company gained traction, earning loyal clients and a stellar reputation. Success came knocking louder than Maria ever expected. Within a decade, her once small startup had grown into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, employing hundreds of people across multiple states. Yet despite her achievements, Maria remained grounded. She drove a reliable sedan instead of a luxury car, wore clothes bought from discount stores, and continued living in the same cozy apartment she'd rented years ago. To her, material possessions meant little compared to the satisfaction of knowing she'd made a difference. Friends and colleagues often teased her about her frugality. "Maria, you're worth millions," they'd say. "Why don't you treat yourself?" But Maria shrugged off their comments. "I've got everything I need," she'd reply with a smile. "Besides, why spend money just to show off? That's not who I am." This mindset shaped nearly every aspect of her life, including how she traveled. Even as her business required frequent flights, Maria preferred economy class. She saw no reason to splurge on first-class tickets when the destination mattered more than the journey. Despite her wealth, Maria carried herself with humility. Strangers meeting her for the first time might mistake her for an ordinary woman, someone who blended seamlessly into crowds without drawing attention, and perhaps that was exactly what made her so remarkable. In a world obsessed with appearances, Maria proved that true strength lies not in what you wear or how much you earn, but in the values you hold dear and the actions you take to uplift others. Little did Maria know, however, that one seemingly insignificant moment during a routine trip would test those very principles and change her life forever. Maria's decision to book a first-class ticket for her flight to New York wasn't something she did lightly. It was rare for her to indulge in such luxuries, but this trip felt different. She had been working nonstop for months, juggling meetings, deadlines, and the demands of running her business. A friend had even joked, "Maria, if you don't take care of yourself, who will?" So, after much deliberation, Maria decided to treat herself. First class would be her way of saying thank you, to herself, for all the hard work she'd put in. The morning of the flight arrived crisp and clear, with the autumn air carrying a slight chill. Maria woke up early, packed her bag with essentials, and headed to the airport. As usual, she dressed simply, a pair of worn-out sneakers, jeans, and a cozy cardigan that had seen better days. To her, comfort mattered more than style, especially during long flights. Besides, she reasoned, no one cared what she wore as long as she got to her destination safely. When she reached the gate, Maria handed over her boarding pass to the airline employee stationed there. The young woman glanced at it briefly before looking up at Maria with an expression that could only be described as skeptical. Her perfectly manicured brows furrowed slightly as she studied Maria from head to toe. For a moment, Maria thought nothing of it. After all, checking tickets was part of the job. But then the employee spoke. "Are you sure this is your seat?" the woman asked, her tone laced with disbelief. She held up the boarding pass, pointing to the words, "First class," printed clearly on it. "This says you're in first class?" Maria blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Yes," she replied politely. "That's correct." The employee hesitated, her lips curling into a faint smirk. She said, dragging out the word, as though savoring the moment. "I'm going to need you to wait here while I confirm this." Maria frowned, confusion clouding her face. "Confirm what? My reservation?" "Yes," the woman said curtly, already turning away to consult her computer. "We'll let you know shortly." Standing there, Maria felt a mix of emotions bubbling inside her. Embarrassment was the strongest, one she hadn't experienced in years. Passengers waiting nearby glanced curiously at her, some whispering behind cupped hands. Was this really happening? Hadn't she paid for her ticket like everyone else? Why was she being singled out? Minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly. Maria tried to stay calm, reminding herself that misunderstandings happen sometimes. Maybe there was an issue with her reservation, or perhaps the system needed updating. Whatever the reason, she told herself not to jump to conclusions. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. This wasn't about confirming a reservation. It was about judgment, a snap decision based solely on how she looked. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the employee returned. Without making eye contact, she handed back Maria's boarding pass. "It seems everything checks out," she said flatly, almost begrudgingly. "You can proceed now." Maria nodded stiffly, forcing a tight smile. "Thank you," she muttered, though the words tasted bitter on her tongue. As she walked toward the jet bridge, she couldn't help but notice the stares following her. Some were sympathetic, while others seemed amused. Either way, the experience left a sour taste in her mouth. Once aboard the plane, Maria settled into her seat, grateful for the privacy the curtain provided between first class and the rest of the cabin. Still, the encounter lingered in her mind, replaying itself over and over like a broken record. Why had the employee treated her that way? Would someone dressed in designer clothes have faced the same scrutiny? The questions swirled endlessly, gnawing at her sense of fairness. As the plane taxied down the runway, Maria gazed out the window, watching the ground grow smaller beneath her. She tried to focus on the purpose of her trip, a routine business meeting that required her full attention, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the incident. It wasn't just about being embarrassed, it was about being judged unfairly. She had worked tirelessly to build her life, overcoming countless obstacles along the way. And yet, in that moment at the gate, none of that mattered. All that mattered was how she appeared on the outside. For the rest of the flight, Maria wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to let it go, to chalk it up as one bad experience among many and move on. But another part of her refused to ignore what had happened. Something about the situation didn't sit right, and she knew she couldn't simply brush it aside. By the time the plane touched down in New York, Maria had made up her mind. She wasn't going to stand idly by while injustice went unchecked. Whatever it took, she would find a way to address this, not just for herself but for others who might face similar treatment. Little did Maria know, her determination to seek accountability would set off a chain of events that would ripple far beyond her expectations. What started as a personal affront would soon become a catalyst for change, one that would challenge an entire industry and redefine how people viewed fairness in customer service. By the time Maria stepped off the plane in New York, her resolve had hardened. The initial sting of embarrassment had faded, replaced by a simmering sense of injustice. She wasn't someone who sought revenge or drama, but this situation felt different. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the principle. If something like this could happen to her, a successful businesswoman with resources and influence, what about others who didn't have the same advantages? What about the single parent traveling alone, the college student on a tight budget, or the elderly person struggling to navigate modern systems? Would they be treated with the same dismissive attitude? Determined to address the issue, Maria decided to take the first step, filing a formal complaint. Back at her hotel later that evening, she sat down at the desk in her room and opened her laptop. With deliberate care, she drafted an email to the airline's customer service department. Her tone was calm and professional, detailing the events exactly as they had unfolded without exaggeration or hostility. She explained how the gate agent's actions made her feel humiliated and questioned whether this kind of behavior aligned with the company's values. Before hitting send, she reread the message multiple times, ensuring it conveyed both her disappointment and her hope for accountability. The next morning, after completing her business meeting, Maria checked her inbox expecting a thoughtful response. Instead, what she found left her stunned. The airline's reply was brief, impersonal, and almost robotic in its delivery. "We apologize for any inconvenience caused," the email began, before quickly pivoting to defend the employee's actions. "Our staff follows strict protocols to ensure passenger safety and accuracy. We appreciate your understanding." Maria read the words again and again, each time feeling more incredulous than the last. Not only had the airline failed to acknowledge the discriminatory nature of the incident, but they also seemed to justify it under the guise of protocol. To make matters worse, there was no offer of resolution, not even a token gesture, like a voucher or refund. It was as if her complaint had been brushed aside, dismissed as irrelevant. Frustration bubbled inside her, but Maria refused to let anger cloud her judgment. Instead, she channeled her emotions into action. Over the next few hours, she dove headfirst into research, determined to uncover whether her experience was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. Using publicly available data, news articles, and social media platforms, she scoured the internet for stories involving the airline. What she discovered shocked her. Countless passengers had shared similar experiences online, describing instances of bias, rudeness, and outright discrimination. Some recounted being questioned repeatedly about their tickets despite presenting valid documentation. Others spoke of being denied access to lounges or upgrades due to their appearance or perceived socioeconomic status. One particularly heartbreaking story came from a young woman who said she was removed from a flight because the crew doubted her ability to pay for her ticket, even though she had already paid in full. Maria's heart sank as she pieced together the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one rude employee. It was symptomatic of a systemic problem within the company. Somewhere along the line, The airline had lost sight of its responsibility to treat all customers with dignity and respect. Instead, it appeared to prioritize superficial judgments over fairness and equality. The realization hit Maria like a punch to the gut. How could a company entrusted with transporting millions of people every year operate with such blatant disregard for basic human decency? As the day wore on, Maria found herself unable to focus on anything else. Her mind raced with possibilities, each idea more audacious than the last. At first, she considered writing an op-ed to expose the airline's practices, hoping public pressure might force them to change. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that wouldn't be enough. Words alone couldn't dismantle a deeply ingrained culture of prejudice. Something bolder was needed, something that would send an unmistakable message. That night, lying awake in her hotel bed, Maria began formulating a plan. Her background in business gave her unique insights into corporate structures, including vulnerabilities that could be exploited when necessary. She knew that companies, no matter how large or powerful, were ultimately beholden to their shareholders. Control the majority stake and you control the direction of the entire organization. It was a risky move, requiring significant financial investment and strategic maneuvering, but Maria had never shied away from taking calculated risks. Early, the next morning, Maria contacted her trusted team of advisors and financial analysts. Together, they reviewed the airline's stock performance, ownership distribution, and market value. After hours of intense discussion, they identified a window of opportunity. Shares of the airline were currently undervalued due to recent operational challenges, making it easier to acquire a controlling stake without drawing too much attention. Maria instructed her team to act swiftly, purchasing as many shares as possible through various channels to avoid tipping off competitors or regulators. The process was complex and exhausting, involving late-night calls, frantic negotiations, and endless paperwork. Yet Maria remained laser-focused, driven by a singular purpose. By midnight, less than 24 hours after her humiliating encounter at the gate, she owned 51% of the airline. It was a staggering feat, one that would have seemed impossible to anyone else. But Maria had always thrived under pressure. With her newfound leverage, Maria wasted no time. At dawn, she called an emergency board meeting, summoning executives to convene immediately. When they arrived, bleary-eyed and confused, they were greeted by an unexpected sight. Maria Thompson, the unassuming woman they had so callously dismissed, now sitting confidently at the head of the table. Without preamble, she introduced herself, recounting her experience at the gate and presenting evidence of the company's discriminatory practices. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. "I'm not here to destroy this company," Maria said firmly, her voice steady and commanding. "I'm here to fix it. Starting today, we're going to implement sweeping changes that will restore trust, promote inclusivity, and hold everyone accountable. From frontline employees to top executives. This isn't negotiable." Her words hung in the air, leaving no room for argument. For the first time, Maria allowed herself a small smile. She had taken the first step toward justice, and nothing would stop her now. The emergency board meeting was unlike anything the airline's executives had ever experienced. When Maria walked into the room, her presence commanded attention, not because of flashy clothes or an intimidating demeanor, but because of the quiet confidence she exuded. She didn't shout or raise her voice. Instead, she spoke with a calm authority that made it clear she meant business. The executives, who had spent years climbing the corporate ladder and wielding power, suddenly found themselves on the defensive. For the first time in their careers, they were facing someone who held all the cards and wasn't afraid to play them. Maria began by laying out the facts. She recounted her experience at the gate in vivid detail, describing how she had been humiliated in front of other passengers simply because of how she looked. She then presented a dossier of evidence compiled overnight, social media posts, news articles, and customer complaints, all pointing to a pattern of discriminatory behavior within the company. "This isn't just about me," she said, her tone firm but measured. "It's about every single person who has been treated unfairly by this airline. It's about the values you claim to uphold versus the reality of what happens on the ground. The room was silent as the executives absorbed her words. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats while others exchanged nervous glances. They knew they were in trouble, but none of them could have predicted what came next. Maria pulled out a document detailing her ownership stake in the company, a staggering 51%. With that simple piece of paper, she had effectively taken control of the entire organization. The executives stared at her in disbelief, their faces pale with shock. One of them finally broke the silence. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I want change," Maria replied without hesitation. "Real, meaningful change. And I'm going to make sure it happens." Over the next hour, Maria outlined her vision for the airline. Her plan was comprehensive, addressing every aspect of the company's operations. First, she announced the immediate termination of the employee who had humiliated her at the gate. "That individual represents everything wrong with this company," she said. "They will no longer be part of this organization." Next, she called for a complete overhaul of the training programs given to frontline staff. Sensitivity training would become mandatory for all employees, focusing not only on customer service skills, but also on recognizing and eliminating biases. But Maria didn't stop there. She demanded structural changes at the highest levels of leadership. "If we're going to fix this company, we need accountability," she declared. "That starts with replacing key executives who have allowed these toxic practices to continue unchecked." She named several individuals whose actions, or lack thereof, had contributed to the culture of discrimination. Within minutes, those executives were escorted out of the room, their careers abruptly ended. The remaining board members sat frozen, unsure whether to feel relieved they still had jobs or terrified of what might come next. Maria also proposed creating a new department dedicated to monitoring and addressing customer complaints. This team would operate independently of the existing management structure, ensuring transparency and fairness. Customers who felt mistreated would have a direct line to escalate their concerns, bypassing layers of bureaucracy that often silenced dissenting voices. "We need to show people we're serious about fixing these issues," Maria explained. "Actions speak louder than words." Finally, she announced her decision to slash executive bonuses and redirect those funds toward initiatives aimed at improving employee morale and customer satisfaction. "No one here is irreplaceable," she said, looking around the table. "If you want to keep your job, you'll earn it by working harder and doing better. This company exists to serve its customers, not to enrich a handful of people at the tie." As the meeting drew to a close, Maria left the executives with one final thought. "I bought this company not to profit from it, but to transform it. If you choose to stay, you'll be part of that transformation. If not, I'll find others who are willing to step up. The choice is yours." News of Maria's takeover spread like wildfire. By mid-morning, headlines were already lighting up. Social media platforms and news outlets across the country. "Woman buys airline after being mistreated" became the top trending topic, sparking widespread debate and admiration. Ordinary people praised Maria for standing up against injustice, while industry insiders marveled at her boldness and strategic brilliance. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to learn more about the woman who had turned a personal insult into a corporate revolution. Employees of the airline reacted with a mix of emotions. Those who had long endured the company's toxic culture cheered Maria's reforms, seeing her as a beacon of hope. "Maybe now things will actually get better," one flight attendant told a reporter. Others, particularly those in managerial positions, quietly resigned, realizing they couldn't adapt to Maria's new vision. Morale among rank-and-file workers soared as they saw tangible proof that their concerns mattered. Meanwhile, customers flooded the airline's social media pages with messages of support. Many shared their own stories of mistreatment, thanking Maria for shining a light on an issue that had gone unaddressed for far too long. Some even vowed to give the airline another chance, encouraged by the promise of change. "For years, I avoided flying with them because of how rude their staff was," one passenger wrote. "But if this woman is running things now, I'm willing to give them a shot." Behind the scenes, Maria worked tirelessly to implement her plans. She assembled a diverse team of advisors, including experts in diversity and inclusion, customer experience, and organizational psychology. Together, they crafted policies designed to foster a culture of respect and accountability. Training sessions began almost immediately, with employees learning how to interact with customers in ways that prioritized empathy and understanding. Role-playing exercises helped staff practice handling difficult situations without resorting to judgment or bias. Maria also took steps to rebuild trust with the public. In a heartfelt letter published on the airline's website, she apologized for the company's past mistakes and outlined her commitment to creating a better future. To everyone who has ever felt disrespected or undervalued by this airline, I am truly sorry, she wrote. You deserve better, and I promise to do everything in my power to ensure you receive it. Within weeks, the effects of Maria's leadership began to show. Customer satisfaction ratings improved dramatically, reversing years of decline. Complaints dropped sharply as passengers noticed a marked difference in how they were treated. Even longtime critics of the airline admitted they were impressed by the turnaround. It's like night and day, one frequent traveler remarked. The staff seems genuinely happy to help, and the overall vibe is so much more welcoming. Yet despite the accolades pouring in, Maria remained humble. She refused to accept any salary or bonuses for her role as CEO, choosing instead to donate her earnings to charities supporting marginalized communities. This isn't about me, she often said when asked about her motivations. It's about proving that businesses can and should do better. We have a responsibility to treat people with kindness and fairness no matter who they are or where they come from. As the months passed, Maria's story continued to inspire people around the world. Schools invited her to speak to students about perseverance and integrity, while community organizations sought her advice on promoting inclusivity. Through it all, she stayed true to the values instilled in her by her mother: hard work, humility, and a relentless drive to make the world a better place. Little did Maria know, however, that her journey was far from over. While she had successfully transformed the airline, her actions had sparked conversations far beyond the aviation industry. People were starting to ask tough questions about discrimination and accountability in other sectors. For Maria, this was just the beginning. Her fight for justice had opened doors she never imagined possible, and she was ready to walk through them, one step at a time. The ripple effects of Maria's takeover spread far beyond the confines of the airline industry. What had started as a personal quest for justice quickly evolved into a movement that challenged societal norms and corporate practices across multiple sectors. The public's fascination with her story wasn't just about the dramatic reversal of power. It was about the message she sent. No one is above accountability, and fairness should never be optional. As news outlets continued to cover the transformation of the airline, journalists began digging deeper into Maria's background. They discovered her humble beginnings in Ohio, her rise from intern to entrepreneur, and her unwavering commitment to ethical business practices. Interviews with former colleagues painted a picture of a woman who led by example, someone who believed in lifting others up rather than stepping on them to climb higher. These stories resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, turning Maria into an unlikely hero. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like Be Like Maria and Fairness Matters, inspiring countless individuals to share their own experiences of overcoming adversity or fighting for equality. But Maria didn't seek fame or recognition. For her, the real victory lay in the tangible changes taking place within the airline. Employees who had once felt powerless under the old regime now approached their jobs with renewed energy and purpose. Sensitivity training sessions opened honest dialogues about bias and privilege, encouraging staff to reflect on their own behaviors and assumptions. One flight attendant, Sarah, shared how transformative the experience had been. Before, I thought being polite was enough, she said during a team meeting. Now I realize there's a difference between being polite and being truly respectful. It's about seeing each passenger as a person, not judging them based on what they're wearing or how they look. Passengers noticed the shift too. In online reviews and social media posts, travelers described interactions with employees that were warm, attentive, and free of judgment. A businessman recounted how a gate agent went out of their way to assist him when he arrived late due to traffic. "She could have made me feel small for holding everyone up," he wrote. Instead, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, we'll get you sorted." That moment stuck with me because it reminded me that kindness still exists. Such anecdotes became commonplace, reinforcing Maria's belief that meaningful change was possible when people prioritized humanity over hierarchy. While the airline flourished under her leadership, Maria knew her work wasn't done. She used her platform to advocate for systemic change in other industries, funding initiatives aimed at combating discrimination and promoting inclusivity. Her first major project outside the airline focused on hospitality, a sector notorious for its rigid class distinctions. Partnering with hotels and restaurants, Maria launched workshops designed to educate staff on recognizing unconscious biases and fostering inclusive environments. "It's not just about saying the right things," she told participants during one session. "It's about creating spaces where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their background." Her efforts extended beyond professional settings as well. Maria collaborated with schools and community organizations to develop programs teaching young people the importance of empathy and equity. She often visited classrooms herself, sharing her journey and encouraging students to dream big while staying grounded in their values. "Success isn't measured by how much money you make," she would tell them. "It's measured by the impact you have on others. If you can leave the world a little better than you found it, then you've succeeded." Despite her growing influence, Maria remained fiercely protective of her privacy. She declined lucrative offers to write a memoir or star in a documentary, insisting her story wasn't about her. It was about the principles she stood for. Instead, she poured her energy into causes close to her heart, using her wealth and resources to amplify marginalized voices. When asked why she chose this path, she simply replied, "Because someone has to. And if not me, then who?" Maria's actions inspired others to take similar steps in their own lives. A tech startup founder implemented blind hiring processes after hearing her speak at a conference. A retail chain revamped its customer service policies to eliminate discriminatory practices. Even government agencies reached out, seeking her advice on drafting legislation to address workplace inequities. Each success motivated Maria to push further, reminding her that every small victory contributed to a larger cultural shift. Yet, despite the accolades and admiration, Maria faced criticism too. Some accused her of being naive, arguing that systemic issues couldn't be solved overnight. Others dismissed her efforts as performative, claiming she was using her newfound status for self-promotion. But Maria refused to let negativity deter her. "Change takes time," she said during an interview. "And yes, I'll make mistakes along the way. But giving up isn't an option. If we wait for perfection, nothing will ever improve." One of the most profound moments came when the employee who had humiliated Maria at the gate reached out to apologize. Initially hesitant, Maria agreed to meet with her privately. Over coffee, the woman tearfully admitted she had been following orders from superiors who pressured staff to profile passengers based on appearance. "I didn't think about the harm I was causing," she confessed. "I was just trying to keep my job." Moved by her sincerity, Maria encouraged her to use her experience as motivation to do better. "We all make mistakes," Maria said gently. "What matters is what we learn from them, and whether we choose to grow." By the end of the year, the airline had become a shining example of what businesses could achieve when they prioritized integrity over profit. Awards rolled in, celebrating its turnaround and contributions to social progress. Yet Maria stayed humble, deflecting praise onto the employees and customers who had embraced her vision. "This isn't my success," she insisted. "It belongs to everyone who believed we could do better and worked hard to make it happen." Though Maria eventually stepped down from her role as CEO, her legacy endured. Under new leadership, the airline continued to uphold the values she had instilled, serving as a model for other companies striving to create equitable workplaces. Meanwhile, Maria turned her attention to global issues, joining forces with activists and policymakers to tackle challenges ranging from climate change to economic inequality. Her mantra remained the same. Progress starts with people. If we want a fairer world, we need to start treating each other fairly. Years later, when reflecting on her journey, Maria realized the true impact of her actions wasn't measured in dollars or headlines. It was measured in hearts and minds. She had proven that even the simplest acts of defiance could spark monumental change. And though she never sought recognition, her story served as a reminder that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things when they refused to accept injustice. For Maria Thompson, that was the greatest reward of all. Maria's decision to step away from her role as CEO of the airline marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would see her influence extend far beyond the confines of a single company. Though she no longer held an official title or position within the organization, her impact continued to shape its culture and values. Employees referred to her as the heart of the airline, a nickname born out of gratitude for the transformation she had sparked. Passengers often shared stories about how their travel experiences had improved since Maria took charge, citing not just the upgraded services, but the genuine warmth they encountered at every touchpoint. It was clear that her legacy wasn't confined to policies or procedures. It lived on in the people who carried forward her vision. After leaving the airline, Maria dedicated herself fully to advocacy work, focusing on creating systemic change across industries. She founded a nonprofit organization called Fair Horizons, designed to promote inclusivity, accountability, and ethical practices in businesses worldwide. The initiative quickly gained traction, attracting support from corporations, entrepreneurs, and grassroots activists alike. Through workshops, mentorship programs, and public campaigns, Fair Horizons became a beacon of hope for those fighting against discrimination and inequality. For Maria, it wasn't enough to fix one broken system. She wanted to inspire others to do the same in their own corners of the world. One of the most impactful projects under Fair Horizons was the creation of a certification program for companies committed to fair treatment of employees and customers. Dubbed the Equity Seal, this designation served as both a reward and a challenge. Businesses had to meet rigorous standards related to diversity, transparency, and community engagement to earn it. Once certified, they could display the EI seal proudly, a signal to consumers that they were choosing an organization aligned with their values. Within months, dozens of companies applied for the certification, eager to prove they were serious about positive change. Maria personally reviewed each application, ensuring that the process remained authentic and meaningful. Her efforts also extended into education, where she believed real progress began. Partnering with schools and universities, Maria launched a curriculum focused on teaching students about empathy, leadership, and social responsibility. She visited classrooms regularly, sharing her story and encouraging young minds to think critically about the kind of future they wanted to build. "You don't have to wait until you're older to make a difference," she would tell them. "Every action you take matters. Whether it's standing up for someone being bullied or volunteering your time, you have the power to create change right now." These visits weren't just lectures. They were opportunities for connection. Students peppered Maria with questions, curious about everything from her childhood struggles to her bold takeover of the airline. Her answers were always honest and relatable, filled with anecdotes that made her feel less like a distant figure and more like a trusted friend. One high school senior named Jamal later wrote an essay describing how Maria's words inspired him to pursue a career in social justice. "Before meeting her, I thought changing the world was something only superheroes did," he wrote. "Now I know anyone can be a hero, you just have to care enough to try." As Maria traveled the globe spreading her message, she encountered countless individuals whose lives had been touched by her work. A flight attendant from the airline approached her at a conference, tears streaming down her face, to thank her for giving her a voice. A customer service representative from a certified company shared how the Equity Seal had helped restore his faith in corporate accountability. Even strangers stopped her on the street to express their admiration. "You remind me that good people still exist," one woman said, clutching Maria's hand tightly. These moments reinforced Maria's belief that kindness and fairness were universal languages, ones that transcended borders, backgrounds, and beliefs. Despite her growing fame, Maria never lost sight of her roots. She returned frequently to her hometown in Ohio, visiting her mother and reconnecting with old friends. Margaret, now in her late 70s, watched with pride as her daughter's story unfolded. "I always knew you'd do great things," she told Maria during one visit. "But I never imagined you'd change the world." Maria laughed softly, brushing aside the compliment. "Mom, I didn't change the world," she replied. "I just showed people what's possible when we choose to treat each other with respect." Even in her personal life, Maria stayed true to her principles. She continued to live modestly, eschewing luxury cars and designer clothes in favor of simplicity. When asked why she didn't indulge in the finer things after achieving so much success, she shrugged. "Comfort isn't measured by price tags," she said. "It's about living in alignment with your values. If I started chasing wealth or status, I'd lose sight of why I started this journey in the first place." Over time, Maria's story became a symbol of resilience and integrity. Books were written about her, documentaries aired on television, and podcasts featured interviews with those who had crossed paths with her. Yet through it all, she remained remarkably grounded. "I'm just a regular person who got tired of seeing injustice go unchallenged," she often said. "If my story inspires even one person to stand up for what's right, then it's worth telling." In her later years, Maria slowed down slightly, spending more time reflecting on her journey. She penned a series of essays, not for profit, but to share lessons learned along the way. In one piece titled "The Power of Small Choices," she wrote, "Change doesn't happen overnight, and it rarely comes from grand gestures. More often, it's the result of countless small decisions: to speak up when it's easier to stay silent, to help when it's convenient to walk away, to believe in fairness even when the world seems unfair. Those choices may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they add up to something extraordinary." Her final act of generosity came in the form of a scholarship fund established in her name, designed to support students from underserved communities pursuing careers in business or social justice. The fund ensured that Maria's legacy would endure for generations to come. Recipients of the scholarship often described feeling a deep sense of responsibility to honor her memory by using their education to uplift others. "Maria gave me a chance when no one else would," one recipient said. "Now it's my turn to pay it forward." When Maria passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82, the world mourned the loss of a remarkable leader, but celebrated the indelible mark she left behind. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, highlighting not just her accomplishments but the spirit of compassion and determination that defined her. Countless lives had been transformed because of her courage to challenge the status quo, proving that even the simplest acts of defiance could ignite monumental change. Today, Maria Thompson is remembered not as a billionaire or a corporate titan, but as a woman who dared to believe in a better world and worked tirelessly to bring it to life. Her story serves as a reminder that true strength lies not in titles or wealth, but in the willingness to stand up for what is right, no matter the odds. And though she may no longer be here to witness the ongoing ripple effects of her actions, her legacy continues to inspire millions around the globe. After all, Maria taught us that fairness isn't just a policy, it's a way of life.